10 everyday behaviors that are actually signs of mental illness. Skin picking, excoriation disorder. You're watching TV and suddenly realize you've been picking at a small bump on your arm for the last 20 minutes. It's bleeding. You didn't even notice it happening. You weren't bored. You weren't trying to hurt yourself. It just happened. Most people call this a bad habit and move on. But for a lot of people, this isn't absent-minded fidgeting. It's excoriation disorder, compulsive skin picking. And it affects roughly 1 in 20 people, most of whom have no idea it has a name. The brain sends out a signal: fix something, control something, anything, and the hands obey. In the moment, there's a strange, almost calming relief, like pressure releasing from a valve. But afterward comes the shame, the scars, the quiet embarrassment of wearing long sleeves in summer and hoping nobody asks why. This is closely tied to anxiety, OCD, and trauma. When the world feels too big and too unpredictable, the brain narrows its focus to something small and immediate, something it can manage. The skin becomes the one thing it feels like it can control. And that sense of control, however brief, however damaging, is what keeps the cycle going. It isn't weakness. It isn't vanity. It's a survival response hiding in disguise. Rumination. It's 2 a.m. You should be asleep. Instead, your brain has pulled up a conversation from 4 years ago like it's filing a legal case. Replaying every word, every pause, every moment you wish you'd handled differently. Cringing. Rewinding. Playing it again. Or maybe you're not stuck in the past at all. Maybe you're 3 weeks into the future, rehearsing a conversation that hasn't happened yet. Scripting every response, preparing for every outcome, running disaster scenarios for a situation that may never come. Either way, the result is the same. You're anywhere but here. This is rumination, and it's one of the most quietly destructive things a brain can do to itself. It disguises itself as productivity. Like if you just replay it one more time, you'll finally figure out what went wrong. But you never do. The loop just keeps running. Research consistently links chronic rumination to significantly higher rates of depression and anxiety, not as a side effect, as a direct cause. The brain isn't being careful or thorough. It's misfiring, spinning its wheels on roads that lead nowhere. And the cruelest part is that the harder you try to stop, the louder it gets. If lying down to rest feels more like showing up to court, that's not just overthinking. That's your brain stuck in a pattern, and it doesn't know how to break away. Emotional blunting. Your best friend calls with the best news of her life. You listen. You say the right things. But inside, nothing moves. No excitement, no warmth, just a kind of flat, distant quiet. Or maybe you're on the other side of it. Something terrible happens, and you wait for the wave of emotion that never comes. You feel like you're watching your own life through a window, slightly removed from everything, unable to fully land inside any moment. This is emotional blunting, and it's far more common than most people realize. It's not calmness, it's not maturity. It's the brain's emotional response system running at a fraction of its capacity. Often it develops as a protective mechanism, a response to prolonged stress, trauma, or depression. The brain essentially turns the volume down on feeling to avoid being overwhelmed. The problem is, it doesn't just mute the bad, it mutes everything. Joy, connection, grief, love, all of it gets quieter. People living with emotional blunting often describe feeling like a ghost in their own life, present enough to function, but not fully there. If you've started to wonder why nothing seems to land the way it used to, that's not you becoming stronger. That's your brain trying to protect you from something it never fully processed. Catastrophic thinking. You send a text. An hour passes. No reply. A normal brain thinks, they're probably busy. Your brain opens a full investigation. Did you say something wrong? Are they angry? Are they done with you? By the time they finally respond, you've already written, rehearsed, and delivered your own eulogy for the friendship. This is catastrophic thinking. And it doesn't stop at unanswered texts. Your boss uses a slightly different tone in an email and suddenly you're convinced you're getting fired. You make a small mistake at work and your brain fast forwards to losing everything. A mild headache becomes a terminal diagnosis. Catastrophic thinking takes the smallest spark and builds a 5-alarm fire around it in seconds. It's a hallmark of generalized anxiety disorder, where the brain's threat detection system is stuck on high alert, scanning constantly for danger, finding it everywhere. And the exhausting part is that it feels rational in the moment. It doesn't feel like panic. It feels like preparation, like you're just being realistic. But there's nothing realistic about it. It's your brain running worst-case scenarios on a loop, not to protect you, but because it genuinely doesn't know how to stop. It's not a personality trait. It's a brain permanently stuck in emergency mode. Rejection, sensitivity, dysphoria. Someone gives you a piece of criticism, and it hits like a punch to the chest. Not mild irritation, not brief embarrassment, actual physical pain. A friend takes a little longer than usual to text back, and your brain immediately goes to the worst possible explanation. They're done with you. You did something wrong. You're too much. This is rejection sensitivity dysphoria, or RSD, and it's one of the most misunderstood and underdiagnosed experiences in mental health. It's extremely common in people with ADHD, though it shows up across a range of conditions. The brain has a faulty alarm system that fires at the smallest hint of rejection, real or imagined. And that last part matters. The rejection doesn't even have to be real. A distracted look from someone you love can feel like abandonment. A delayed reply can feel like a verdict. People with RSD often become intense people pleasers, not because they're weak, but because the alternative, feeling that pain, feels completely unbearable. They'll shrink themselves, over-explain, apologize for things that don't need apologizing for, all to avoid triggering that alarm. If you've ever felt an emotional reaction that seemed way too big for the situation and felt ashamed of that too, you were probably never overreacting. And that's not drama. That's a nervous system that never got a chance to feel safe. Anhedonia. You bite into your favorite food, the one you used to crave, and it tastes like nothing. Your closest friend gets the best news of their life, and you watch yourself smile and say the right words. But inside, there's just silence. No warmth, no spark, nothing. This is anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure. And it's one of the most devastating and least talked about symptoms of depression. Most people picture depression as sadness, as crying, as falling apart, as not being able to get out of bed. But for a lot of people, it doesn't look like that at all. It looks like going through the motions, showing up, functioning, doing everything right, while feeling absolutely nothing on the inside. The brain has a reward circuit. When something good happens, it lights up and releases dopamine, and you feel it. With anhedonia, that circuit goes quiet. Music that used to move you sounds flat. Activities you used to love feel pointless. People you care about start to feel like strangers. And the terrifying part is that it's easy to explain away. Maybe I'm just tired. Maybe I'm just getting older. Maybe this is just what life feels like. But it isn't. Feeling nothing isn't neutral. It's a signal. And mistaking it for normalcy is exactly how it survives undetected for so long. Reassurance seeking. You make a small mistake at work. Nothing serious. Nobody even noticed. But you can't let it go. You bring it up to a friend and they tell you it's fine. Relief. For about 4 minutes. Then the doubt creeps back in. Were they just being nice? Did they really mean it? So you bring it up again, just to be sure. This is excessive reassurance seeking, and it's not about getting new information. Deep down, the person asking already knows the answer. It's about silencing that unbearable spike of anxiety, even if only for a few seconds. The problem is that every time reassurance works, the brain learns to need it more. The window of relief gets shorter, the anxiety comes back faster, and the cycle tightens. People caught in this pattern aren't being needy or dramatic. They're in genuine distress, chasing a certainty their brain refuses to hold on to. Some will revisit old mistakes repeatedly, confessing minor things from years ago just to hear that everything is still okay. Because the brain is desperately searching for solid ground in a world that feels constantly uncertain. And the cruel irony is that the more it searches, the less solid everything feels. Decision paralysis. The waiter is standing at your table. Simple question, what would you like? But somewhere between reading the menu and opening your mouth, your brain just stalls. What if the pasta is cold? What if I pick wrong? What if I order something and immediately regret it? So you stall. You say you need another minute, then another. Meanwhile, everyone else at the table has ordered, eaten, and is halfway through dessert in your head. This is decision paralysis, and it goes way beyond restaurant menus. People with decision paralysis postpone career moves for years, stay in situations they've outgrown because choosing something different feels too risky. They'll spend 45 minutes scrolling through something to watch and end up watching nothing because picking wrong feels worse than not picking at all. The brain gets so consumed with avoiding the wrong choice that it forgets choosing nothing is also a choice, and usually a more costly one. This isn't indecisiveness as a character flaw. It's an anxiety response. The brain's threat detection system treating a lunch order like a life or death situation. Nearly 1 in 5 adults experiences anxiety severe enough to cause this kind of paralysis. If every decision feels like defusing a bomb, that's not a quirk. That's your brain stuck in a loop it was never meant to stay in. Impulse control disorder. You quit your job without a backup plan. You book a one-way ticket to a country you've never been to on a Tuesday afternoon. You buy something you absolutely cannot afford and feel a rush so intense it almost feels like relief. You call it spontaneous. You call it living. But there's a difference between being a free spirit and having a brain whose stop button is completely broken. Impulse control disorder isn't a lifestyle. It's what happens when the part of the brain responsible for pausing, calculating risk, and considering consequences goes offline. A healthy brain has a built-in delay, a brief moment between impulse and action where it asks, wait, should I actually do this? In an impulse control disorder, that delay doesn't exist. The thought and the action are practically the same thing. And the aftermath is where the real damage lives. Compulsive spending that quietly drowns people in debt. Binge eating that leaves shame in its wake. Explosive anger that destroys relationships in minutes that took years to build. These aren't character flaws. They aren't immaturity. They're the result of a brain that processes risk differently, one that feels the pull of an impulse so intensely that logic doesn't get a seat at the table. The rush is real, but so is the wreckage it leaves behind. Obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD. You're about to leave the house. Keys in hand, shoes on, ready to go. But you have to check the lock. Not once, not twice, a specific number of times, and if you lose count, you start over. Or maybe it's the stove, or the lights, or the way the items on your desk have to be arranged before you can start your day. From the outside, it looks like a quirk, a little extra caution, being particular. But for the person living inside it, there's nothing quirky about it. This is OCD, and it has very little to do with being neat or organized. It's the feeling that something catastrophic will happen if the ritual isn't performed exactly right. The brain generates an intrusive thought, and the ritual is its desperate attempt to neutralize it, to make the feeling stop. And it works. For a moment. Then the anxiety comes back, louder this time, demanding the ritual again, maybe slightly bigger, maybe with one more step added. It's a cycle that can quietly consume hours of someone's day, invisible on the inside even when the behaviors are visible on the out. People with OCD aren't being dramatic or controlling. They're trying to manage an internal alarm system that never shuts off. The ritual isn't the problem. It's the closest thing to relief their brain can find when safety feels impossible to guarantee. None of these behaviors exist in a vacuum. They overlap, they feed each other, and most people spend years normalizing them without ever understanding what they actually are. Mental illness doesn't always look like a breakdown. Sometimes it looks exactly like your everyday life. Which of these felt familiar? Which one made you pause? Because if something resonated, that's worth exploring. And we'll keep doing exactly that.